Just a notation, I think it's evident by the people perhaps that are here that the ones that would have been here for the hearing on rezoning at 3149 Alpine, that request has been withdrawn. So we'll skip over that as we go through the agenda. The third item, second item is review the minutes of September 18, Planning Commission meeting.
Move to accept.
Support. To accept them and supported. Those Tyler and Jason. All those in favor, aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Next is general public comment. This is an opportunity to address items that are not on the agenda. And we look for speakers to identify themselves by name and address, maximum 5 minutes per person. Anybody that wants to offer any comments under general comments? Okay, there being none, we'll move along to case number 19-842, Triangle Associates Edition, site plan review, 2670 Mullins Avenue. Dan, would you like to provide an introduction?
Sure.
Project? Thank you.
Thanks, Terry. Go through a few slides for some background on this site. What we have here is a conventional site plan review, no special use permit, no PUD level final area site plan. So it's a pretty straightforward review, and there's no public hearing required, but I'm sure you'll want to get some comments from the applicant, so there will be a little bit of interaction there. So where are we? We're on Mullins Court south of 3 Mile, which is on the 3 Mile industrial corridor there. This is the Triangle construction shop facility, and not to be confused with their main, I believe it's their headquarters, is at 3 Mile and Fruit Ridge at the northwest corner there, or the northeast corner. This is their more like their contractor shop and yard, and what they want to do is expand their warehousing and their office area at this facility. So you see a total footprint of the completed building at about a little under 7,000 square feet, including the roughly 3,700 square feet of addition that they're proposing here. This is a pretty minor addition in terms of industrial sites, and if you're talking about a large site, if you have under 5,000 square feet of additional area, you can be exempt from a formal site plan review, but there's also a rule that says if you expand by more than 25% of your existing footprint, you go through the formal site plan review. So that's why we're here right now, and some additional rules get triggered by this level of review with the Planning Commission. So the site plan includes those building additions I mentioned, as well as some minor landscaping, a monument sign, kind of formalizing and striping 13 parking spaces, and some resurfacing along the side of the building and the rear addition area in the back. What you'll see in this picture and one other picture on the slides, there's a significant amount of outdoor storage here, which is okay for a sort of a contractor yard type use. One of the benefits of this plan, I think, is that some of that material is going indoors, but you still want to screen the activities that happen in terms of what's being stored outdoors. So that's one of the comments I'll touch on here. This was, I tend to go drive around and take pictures on rainy days for some reason, so you can see some raindrops on the lens there, but this is kind of just the exterior of the site. Looking from the first picture on the top is from farther south, and the picture on the bottom is a little farther north. So you can see the vantage points of the site, the open parking area where they're currently storing some construction trailers, and then back to the rear storage area from the northern property line. And as I said, there's a need per the code to screen your outdoor storage in the rear yard, even if you're surrounded by industrial land use, to a reasonable standard, which is that you shouldn't be able to see to a 6-foot height the materials that are back there. So there are a number of ways to treat that with a property like this. For one thing, there's an existing robust screen of evergreen trees already on a lot of the perimeter. But for those areas in green that I'm showing here, I do recommend that there should be a replacement with some opaque fencing, even if it's slats and chain link fencing. The existing fencing should be supplemented by a hedge or landscaping, or the applicant can demonstrate with a combination of pictures, section drawings, that there's no place that you can see what's back there based on the surrounding topography and vegetation. So I'm hoping that those things are pretty easy to provide in a final submittal. There's another issue, key review issue regarding landscaping. That is that some of the proposed landscaping, which I applaud, I actually pushed for, it turns out it may actually be in a consumer's easement, so I'd want to just make sure there's places to keep all those trees outside of the easement, especially the trees that are going to grow taller. You can see the material. There's some, I believe, cultured stone on the bottom. I might have got that wrong, and I can't read the note now, but I'm sure the architect can explain what the facade is made out of, and then some vinyl and some roofing to kind of dress up the office part of this building in the front. And I think the architecture is appropriate. What I call environmental controls, you can see the nature of the storage out here, and I think Scott's going to touch on some of the stormwater aspects of what has been stored here in the past and how you treat the stormwater that's detained on the site. In terms of surfacing and resurfacing this material, we want to make sure it's dustless and durable and non-erodible. And in terms of site circulation and parking, more just for clarity's sake, this is, I believe, an area that will be accessible around most of the building. You're going to have some resurfacing in the areas where you see shaded on the plans, parking here, and then the gate here, but you move to about 3/4 of the site that way, and I don't believe there's through access to the front and out this way. It's just around and to most of the back of the building. The parking that's provided is also adequate for the uses that are proposed, even with the new addition. So my recommendations of approval are, and I do recommend that conditional approval is appropriate if you work through some of these things. Hear what the city engineer has to say, of course. You need your sign permit application. Staking note should be provided for the work that's in the right-of-way, including the sidewalk that's proposed there. Some of that sidewalk will require a easement, so let's get that recorded. Rear yard screening should be proven up more or less, whether it's adding hedges, adding some different types of fencing or walls, or just proving up with drawings what you have back there being screened. The proposed plants should be, in terms of the trees, should have a 2.5-inch caliper, and we should get the species on a plan. The taller trees shouldn't be in that consumer's easement. The dumpster should have a 6-foot tall screen, and performance standards of Article 15 of the Walker zoning ordinance should be met, and that's something just a boilerplate note for industrial uses, especially just to make sure that standards regarding dust, noise, light, vibration are being adhered to. And then final permit submittals and a final set of plans. So that's my conditions, recommended conditions in summary form there. With that, I will turn it over to Scott, and I'll put this on back on the site plan page.
First off, thanks, Dan. Any comments or questions for Dan at this point? Okay, there being none, we'll turn it over to City Engineer Scott Connors.
Okay, just a handful of comments here. On the northwest part of the site, the sidewalk will come out of the right-of-way just a little bit, so there's an easement shown. We just need to make sure that we get that easement before things get rolling. Too often, those easements get shown on the plan and never really get recorded, so we want to make sure that we have that up front. Next 3 comments are really kind of related to drainage. The plan set has a plan prepared by Triangle and the architect for the project, and it also has a plan prepared by the engineer, and they contradict each other just a little bit. Now, during site plan review, we were told for the detailed stuff, go to the engineering plan, the more enriching plan. So as we do that, there is a swale that directs some water from the building straight west towards the street that seems to be going right towards, can't tell if it's a new sign or an old sign, but certainly something we want to watch for with the drainage. In terms of detention, things like that, usually we're trying to bring these sites into compliance with the stormwater ordinance. There was some talk about having a detention pond on the east part of the property, but the designers have now gone for a different approach that would include using all of that asphalt milling material as pervious, meaning that the water can just go right down into it. And they've had some calculations done to show that they can meet those standards. That stuff will all have to be proved up in the stormwater permit that'll follow if this gets approved tonight. But we recommend that some additional testing be performed there to make sure that they actually get the numbers that they said they're going to get, because they're going to be mixing this stuff up, recycling it, relaying it, and we want to make sure that it's going to be consistent. It's not going to have a whole bunch of runoff, and as Dan said before, you know, the durable, dustless surface, we don't want all this eroding downstream, obviously. That's happened a lot out here, not just this site, but in all of the sites in this area in the past. Part of that compliance is going to mean that the roof drains have to be connected to this area. There's not a lot of storm sewer to collect this, and certainly none of that is treated. So they have not requested a stormwater variance. So that means that they're going to come into compliance when they come and get their stormwater permit. So some of those things are going to be a little challenging, but they will have to do that. And if they can't, then we'll have to come back and talk about it here. The potential for outdoor storage, we talked a little bit about that. That's really something for you guys to talk a little bit about, I think. You know, if all the outdoor outdoor storage is large pieces of sheet piling and trailers and things like that, really kind of gobbles up a lot of the surface area for holding the water. And a lot of that turns into runoff, so we want to be a little bit conscious of that. It's probably just a good discussion item. There's a note about an NPDES stormwater permit, and the state requires industrial sites to get permits when they have outdoor storage and activities. I look at the picture here and I'm absolutely amazed, but the DEQ or Eagle has gotten back to us and said that they don't require a permit here. So they are the final word on that. We'll step back and deal with that. And then lastly, that the curb that they place in the right-of-way out front should be the larger industrial size curb instead of the smaller curb that was shown. And that's it for us.
Okay, thanks, Scott. Any questions for Scott at this point? Okay, there being none, invite the applicant to offer any comments that they may want to offer at this point.
Hello, my name is Craig Dadema. I'm President and CEO of Triangle Associates and the property owner at 2670 Mullins Court. First, I want to thank the chairman and the members of the commission for your time tonight. And I also want to compliment your staff and Mr. Powers and Mr. Connors on their very professional approach of going through a site plan approval process. I'm a licensed architect, and in a former life, I spent 13 years on planning commission, so I know how much work you gentlemen do in between meetings and outside of this chamber. We are in agreement with 99.5% of the recommendations. The one recommendations that I would like the commission to consider relieving is the screening of the dumpster. And the reason for that is, as a construction yard, I don't know how this site will be performing 6 months from now, or 12 months from now, or 18 months from now. Our needs are constantly changing. It's kind of like as the economy goes down or our workload goes down, we need to have more material and equipment in our yard. When that material and equipment's in our yard, I'm not making any money on it. So as we get new work and we can service our customers with trailers and formwork and barricades and fencing, that material goes out to the job sites, and that's where I find my success. Regarding the dumpsters, I mean, I showed on the plan where I thought it would make sense, but it all depends on the need. For example, if I have 6 trailers in the winter that we're going to decide that we're going to refurbish, I want that dumpster close to where those 6 trailers are, so that material from a lean processing standpoint can go right from the trailers into the dumpster. I can also see situations, we do a lot of LEED certified buildings, and for example, higher university buildings are required to be LEED by the state government. But sometimes we get ourselves in a situation, I'm renovating a 4th floor of a university building, and I got one little chute that everything has to go down into a truck, but that material all has to be sorted into different containers for metals and woods and things of that nature. So we haven't done this yet on the yard, but I could see a situation where we'd have 3 dumpsters suddenly on the yard going through that sorting process, and 3 months later, it's all gone. So I think this enclosure, the screen around the dumpster, assumes a traditional manufacturing process where materials come in here, it comes out there, and that's where it gets dumped. But I don't have that kind of traditional process in a construction storage facility. And I just don't want to get into a situation where I'm not in compliance with the requirements of our plan requirements. So we would ask you to relieve us of that condition. The dumpster behind the screened enclosures of the fence, I certainly understand. We can certainly comply with that. Pictures of the trailer out in the front parking lot, I'm assuming that those trailers are coming or going. I can't promise that's the truth, but our goal is to have things behind the fence where it's locked up and secure and behind our screened enclosures. The swale at the sign, Justin and I will kind of, maybe have a hamburger or something over that, but I think we can work around the engineering where the sign goes and make sure the water goes where it needs to. And we do recognize that we do have a little deficiency on that north line is where the water comes off the addition roof, how we're going to collect it and go into the yard, into the detention area. One other comment I have is about the capacity of the detention area, and one of the comments that if we have trailers there and things of that nature, that material just kind of soaks up the water horizontally. It's been in that condition for, I would say, 8 to 10 years where we've had the millings into that. It's kind of consistent with your requirements from your engineering department. It's working. That's the good news. It's working. And I think in our improvement plans, we'll fill in some low areas. We'll add some mesh that might have been damaged. But that water kind of just flows horizontally underneath trailers and things of that nature as our use of the yard expands and contracts. So I think we have a good solution, and I do appreciate the staff here of helping us work through a solution that works in compliance with your ordinance.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Dan?
Can I just add an insight on the dumpster? I think a couple things to consider. This is an existing site, so you might ask how the dumpster is currently used and whether this is something new or if it's basically continuing to dispose of materials in the same way that it's been occurring. And then I think if you look at the intent of the ordinance, it's really just to make sure that waste disposal is screened reasonably. And where a dumpster is out in the open, you certainly want the 6-foot wall or similar material around it. You might be able to make a case here that you're behind the screened opaque portion of the fencing, and then there might be a case to say that you're meeting the intent of the ordinance. So that's my 2 cents on the dumpster issue. It may not be an issue if it's behind that opaque fencing.
Okay.
Well, then I'll make the issue that it's already fenced.
You'll make the point.
I'll make the point. I won't make an issue of
You'll
it.
make the point that it's not an issue.
I'll make a point that it's not an issue, that it's already fenced in.
I agree, Tyler. It's fenced in, I don't have an issue.
Okay.
As long as they don't, maybe we put it in language that the dumpster stays behind the fence.
Yeah, that'd be a reasonable way to,
Yeah.
it lines up with the applicant's representation, and it would be consistent with what Dan's, as a zoning administrator, would accept as
Yeah,
well.
because they may end up with multiple dumpsters too, so they may end up with a steel dumpster, they may end up with construction debris. I know.
Any other comments, questions?
This asphalt, that's pretty well proven, that's, or it just happened to work here and you tested it and it worked, or is this something that's well accepted in the field, or could you explain that a little bit better?
I had a former partner who's a professional engineer, pretty smart guy, and we made those improvements probably 10 years ago. What we had was a big mud puddle left from our predecessor. And I would like to think they talked to staff here and got their opinion. And
And a permit.
and of course a permit. But I think we were looking at how to, the existing conditions you saw is how we purchased the building in 2004. We're not proud of it. Part of our goals today is to, as we expand it, to improve it, put a little office in the front. It's from an architect standpoint, a way to make improvements and create a better facade for our neighbors as well as for ourselves. We're very proud to be part of the Walker community. We like to think that our office building on the corner of Fruit Ridge and 3 Mile is kind of like the entrance from the expressway into the community of Walker. I'm sure many of you have driven by it on a frequent basis, and we maintain it. And we're proud to be a part of the community. So we want to make some improvements to this facility. But quite frankly, behind the fences is the back of the yard operations, flexibility, movement of materials, movement of equipment. It's happening continuously, and quite frankly, most of that activity is beyond my radar. It's just I want to make sure what we do is in compliance with our commitments tonight.
In terms of that material, sounds like periodically over the time you have replenished the millings within the
No, we
parking
really
lot?
haven't added any additional millings. I do see the opportunity, though, when we scrape the millings off for the building addition, we'll have material. And I know we'll have places on the site to smooth it out, fill it in, make sure that we're in compliance with the stormwater calculations, that we have adequate capacity there. And I'm sure nobody's heard any complaints from our site. It's been working for a number of years, so that's probably the best test, is the test of time. And I think only thing that we're going to do is make some additional improvements.
Okay, thank you. If there's no other discussion, probably entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion for case number 19-842, 2670 Mullins Court Northwest, Triangle Associates Site Plan Review. I make a motion to approve the site plan set revision dated 9/18/2019 and supporting application materials for Applicant Triangle Associates, Inc. on behalf of owner Triangle Equities, LLC, to construct 2 building additions with a total combined area of 3,701 square feet to an existing 2,431 square foot building, along with the related site improvements at the subject lot of 2670 Mullins Avenue Northwest. Conditions of site plan approval. The applicant agrees to all conditions noted in the planning director's letter dated 9/23/2019. The applicant agrees to all conditions noted in the city engineer's letter dated 9/24/19. Addendum to all conditions in the planning director's letter. Dumpster does not need its own fencing, but will remain behind the existing fencing.
Support.
Motion by Tyler, supported by Steve. Any comments, questions? There being none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. It's approved then. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is case number 19-843, Flexco, Walker View, Lot I-8, final site plan, final area site plan review. And Dan?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'm going to sit this one out.
Okay, thank you. Let the record show that Jason is stepping down from the dais for this review. And turn it over to Dan Power, our Planning Director, for an introduction.
Okay, this site is a bigger deal in terms of scale, and it is in a plan unit development. It's a brand-new proposal, so it will be a public hearing item. This is the continuation of growth in that Walker View project area, and I will give you some context and some observations from the site plan review process that you can use to make your decision. So here's the proposal. I have varying numbers here, and maybe it doesn't matter too much. There's no difference with respect to how I'm reviewing this, but I saw a different number when this started. It looks like it's down to around 284,000 square foot building. Whether it's 288 or 284, it's, I believe, the second largest building in this whole development area outside of FedEx, and actually the largest then in the Walkerview project area because FedEx is separate from Walkerview. So it's a very large building on a 38-acre site. About a little under 20,000 square feet of that building is going to be office, 136,000 square feet of more intensive manufacturing with about 128,000 of warehousing. There are also about 4 acres of paved surfaces, including the 292 off-street parking spaces, sidewalks, access drives, outdoor loading and storage, primarily outdoor loading, public water and public service connections, landscaping, including 89 trees, 103 shrubs, and about 300 other species of grass and perennials. Here is the architectural detail. I'll come back to this, but one thing you notice here is that they took a different tack from the neighboring property. You reviewed the Falk site. It's now getting built and getting actually pretty close to being done in terms of the building. It's really coming together. But what they did with Falk is kind of orient their front door, so to speak, to I-96. With this building, they're orienting more toward Northridge. So very nice architectural detail from the standpoint of zoning ordinance. A lot of approved architectural primary facade materials here on the Northridge side with the glass, different architectural paneling, some accentuation in interesting places. But just the counter to that is the rear side of the building is not the same level of design detail. But a very nice facade here in my interpretation. This is where the site lies in context with some of the other projects you folks on the Planning Commission have approved in the last couple of years. You have FedEx up there to the northwest, the Falk site directly to the east, Design Manufacturing farther to the east, and then kitty corner is automation equipment. And then right across the street is the large regional detention basin site. Before development occurred, the lines on this page were accurate in terms of the squiggly contour lines. Topography generally led you toward the ravine of the, I believe it's like a tributary of one of the creeks, maybe the Indian Mill Creek, and there's some wetlands by that. So the site still drops off quite a bit toward that creek bed. And otherwise on this image, you see the easements that have been placed over the detention basins, and then the public utilities on Northridge Drive. One thing I focus on in my report is the configuration of the surrounding property, and I use the term environmental limits to describe this category of stuff as well. In terms of environmental limits, we just say the same thing with all these Walkerview sites. Continue to honor the due diligence and due care plan that came in with the original project, being that there was some old orchard in this area. And we'll just leave it at that it's the owner's responsibility to make sure those are adhered to. But otherwise, in terms of how this lot fits together with the surrounding property and how the pieces of the overall Walkerview puzzle come together, this stretch of Northridge Drive on the south end is a mosaic of parcels that you just want to be careful with it as you look at the big picture. This parcel certainly makes sense with the ravine to the west being the property line. Just keep in mind, there was a plan conditionally approved for I-6 last year, and that sounds like that's going away. And there is some other projects that haven't been, there may or may not be projects at these other lots, but just think about how those all fit together. We want to make sure that there's an overall grading balance, more or less, that there's appropriate separation and a limited number of driveways and road cuts, and that relates to there being strategic utility connections to all these sites, safe and navigable access and maintenance routes to all these sites. So just to keep that in mind, those are smaller lots to the west. This lot plugs in quite well. So key review issues from my standpoint from the zoning ordinance side, the use of the property, the architecture of the building and the signage, and then landscaping and earthwork. So in terms of the use, Flexco, formerly the Clipper Belt, I think I got this right, and I'll ask the owner to correct me if I got this wrong, but it was formerly Clipper Belt, is moving from 2 facilities in Grand Rapids to consolidate at this location here in Walker. It's a manufacturer of belt fasteners, cleaners, maintenance products. So this type of manufacturing is permitted by right in the ML zoning district and therefore in the IPUD, Industrial Plan Unit Development Zone District, that this property sits on. I'm just starting to get a feel for, now that the sites are getting built in Walker View, driving on I-96, you can see Falk, and just thinking about the relationship between these sites and across the road, you do have some residential across the road there. So it's just good to keep in mind, we're looking at still lighter intensity manufacturing and uses that can be in somewhat proximity to the condos and whatnot that are on the sort of kitty corner on the south side of I-96 with the Bristol Ridge project. That's kind of that purple blob there. But the uses on this site are certainly permitted by right. In terms of architecture, as I said, I really appreciate the work on the facade in the front. I did just want to call out that there's a, like I said, they're kind of turning the back of the building to I-96, and that works for their purpose, for their business. You might just ask if they're still considering putting some glass on that facade and dress it up a little bit, which I think they mentioned considering doing earlier. But I don't know that they're obligated to, particularly based on the topography of this site and how much you're going to see that wall. Just something that if they want to give a little bit more interest to that side, they might still want to do that. And then, of course, if you see this wall at all, it's appealing to have signage there. So they have proposed to have a 164 square foot Flexco sign on the back wall, which fits with the overall sign package for the Walker View project area. It said that there would be one wall sign facing I-96 at a 1 foot to 1 square foot ratio. So that is consistent with what we approved up front for all these Walker View sites. But it is something just to be mindful of. That's a little larger than we normally allow under our zoning ordinance. Certainly scales up to be not much area in terms of the overall building. And then there will be a monument sign up here by the road, it looks like, not labeled that way, but that is what that looks like. And so one of my comments is just to get sign permits for the signage that's proposed here. My last set of comments is landscaping and earthwork. This is a huge site, 38 acres, at least huge compared to what we normally look at here. The site is a large flat building pad by necessity, and so it's going to require some grading where you have some topography in the site that previously exists. So it looks like they're dropping the site down in relation to the adjacent grade where the Falk building is, up to 16 feet in one spot there on the east end, and then grading up on the west end to keep it flat until they again drop down toward that creek on the west side. So ultimately what you look at when you're driving by, and this didn't make it onto this slide, but it's if you're driving from a vantage point on the freeway, you're looking up a little bit and the building's up a few feet before it starts, and then of course there's the tall facade there. So you'll see this if there's spots in the highway right-of-way where the vegetation's clear. There's the image I was referring to, sort of the section of how this relates to a driver on I-96. My last, I think my last substantive slide here is just the landscaping that's proposed. Again, they're dressing up the Northridge side, not as much the I-96 side. I do wonder if they'd consider having a few trees maybe moved over to the south end of the site where you can see that side from the freeway. It might help to dress up the corners where you have a large paved area. And actually, I didn't color this in, but this is open lawn, I believe, for now until maybe there's an expansion in the future. And I think I saw in Scott's report there's some steep slope areas, and it might be a good idea to look at some low-grow seed mixes that can stabilize those slopes on the edge so it's not as much of a maintenance concern. So those might just be some landscaping plan edits that they might consider. A few trees moved to the south and some low-grow seed mix on those steep slope spots. With those comments, my recommendations list is pretty concise relative to some that we have. I want to, again, defer to the city engineer's recommendations. Ask the applicant if they are going to put some glass on that rear facade, add that to the final drawing set, and maybe just clarify their intent there. The landscaping adjustments I mentioned, they might consider those and add the trees to the south end of the site and the low-grow seed mix on the slopes. And this is all stuff we'd see on a final plan set. One note, you do see a deferred parking area that might be proportional to if and when they expand. Just to note, that would knock out some of the landscaping they propose now. So just to put it on record now that we want to have that landscaping replaced and expanded proportionally to the future parking expansion. Any future addition greater than 5,000 square feet would come back to the Planning Commission for an approval consistent with how we handle site plans and building additions. As far as detail item, we want to have the overall length dimension and back of walk elevations for the sidewalk. And then a couple of boilerplate comments about we need that sign permit application, the soil erosion permit, stormwater and highway permits. Those all come in separately. And in terms of soil erosion, stormwater, and highway, we should get those before the building permit is issued. And finally, anything plan-related that I mentioned should be on a final plan set. We should get 4 copies of the plans and a PDF prior to our issuing a building permit. And I did mention, and I don't know if this note is relevant, I said that if there are any easements that are required for this project, we need those recorded with the County Register of Deeds. I'm not sure if there need to be any easement adjustments unless Scott caught something about that. So I might slice that comment off the list. But otherwise, pretty simple list of conditions, and I recommend conditional approval.
Thank you, Dan. Any questions for Dan's presentation at this point? Okay, thanks, Dan. We'll move along to City Engineer Scott Connors, please.
So the first comment we had was related to the truck docks on the southeast corner of the building. During site plan review, we had asked that grass area to have the kind of small radius that was there increased to make the truck turning movements work a little bit better. It wasn't adjusted. They did throw the truck turning template on, but it was only for one bay. And as I looked at that truck turning template, it just looked to me like it would make a whole lot more sense to try to make that adjustment in the grass area and leave some options open so that more than one truck could navigate this area at a time. If it's a facility that's this big, I think it's twice as big as the Cabela's that we were looking at one point, to put it in perspective. So this is a big building. And I imagine there'll be a lot going on. So along those lines, we want to see more truck turning templates for different spots. There's certainly the trucks to the west, and then this movement won't work for all of these spots with it being so tight, kind of a one-way in and out. So we want to make sure that the site plan shows that, and we're looking out for the interest of the future inhabitant here. Several parts of the plan show a 30-foot utility easement on the south side of the property, but that's not shown on the final design drawings. I think it might have been a leftover from the original drainage plan that looked at other different lots in Walker View, maybe draining across here, but that's certainly something to clear up now. If that easement was recorded, it should be shown as part of the site plan. It's got to be on there, but it may not be needed, so there's potentially a way that they can get rid of that. But hopefully it was actually recorded. Otherwise, it'd be one of those great examples of why we get these easements up front. So we asked for some additional information on the future footprint for the building, and that might seem a little picky, but when you look at the size of storm sewer pipes, the size of detention, and all those kinds of things, when you're building on the upstream side of the site and you need to go through this part of the site, we got to make sure that the pipes are all sized for that future use so that they don't all have to be ripped out at some point and increased in size. So we want to see that. The other thing is that oftentimes a developer will use one engineer for phase one, and then they'll call up somebody new in 5 years or 10 years, and a lot of the data is just lost. So we want as much of that on the plan as we can to kind of rebuild the situation if there's a future expansion. Dan mentioned the change in grade. There's about a 25-foot drop from the flat, what'll probably be a grass area, down to some 1-on-3 slopes that go down to that natural ravine. It's a very sensitive ravine. It's actually a beautiful spot, but there have been some soil erosion violations there of late with the grading that was going on related to the Fox site. So we don't want to mess with that. We want to make sure that there's probably going to be some additional requirements there, and then for the new applicant who's taking over that site, they kind of take over that responsibility when they step in. We want them to make sure that they have additional controls in place for that. We've also asked that the city's standard driveway detail be shown on the plan, and that additional sidewalk grades be shown every 50 feet along the entire frontage. We've had a real rash of sidewalk staking problems out in the Northridge development in Walker View lately, and just trying to get as much data on there as we can, because if the crew goes out and doesn't have all the data they need, we get billed for it. And we've had several of these where they show up several times, and the bill gets to be a lot for the city, way more than the permit cost that we issue. So it's important to get that stuff on the plan up front. That's it.
Okay, any other comments or questions for Scott? Before we open the public hearing, give the applicant an opportunity to offer a presentation on this.
Hello again, Justin Longstreth with Moore and Brugink. Also have a couple representatives from Flexco here tonight, so if there's questions that they can maybe help better answer, I'll invite them up. But again, as always, Dan did a great job of the introduction. This is a consolidation of a couple of different facilities that they have in Grand Rapids, just trying to bring everything under one roof. So they're going to have their office, R&D, manufacturing, all in one spot. So a couple things that we can touch on based on staff comments. One is the facade on the rear or the south side of the building. One is, at one point there was glass shown on that facade. They are proposing now to remove that glass. And to Dan's point in his comment, what we would propose in lieu of the glass is to move some more of that landscaping to the south side, just to break up that wall. So we're perfectly amenable to doing that.
So the glass panels shown on these plans are going away?
Yes, sir. That would be our intent and our request tonight, yes. Along those same lines, there was some question about the truck docks and how those work. There are two sets of docks, one on the east side of the building, one on the west side. One's shipping, one's receiving. And for this facility, the trucks from one side don't cross over to the other. So we won't have trucks from the east dock go over to the west dock. So in light of that, we did do some truck turning templates, found that the pavement that we have provided out on the east dock is sufficient. And so we would request that we keep that the same. One of the things that we looked at was, and I think the truck turning template that we provided was having a truck swing in and then back in using his driver's side mirror, anticipating that would be the preferred method for them to back into those docks. And with them not making that western movement, we didn't see the need for the increased radius. So if it's a matter of us providing city staff with more of those truck turning templates to see how the trucks can get into each of those docks without requiring the additional radius, we certainly will do that. The drainage easement that Scott had mentioned, that was something that was proposed very early on with the overall PUD. At one point, there were certain lots proposed where the Falk building is happening that were planned to have their stormwater drain to the west across this lot. That plan has now changed. Falk's water goes to the east, and so that easement is not necessary. It never was recorded. It was just a placeholder shown on the plan. So we can get that, if it shows up on our plans now, we can certainly get that scrubbed off because we don't need that now. And then one of the other comments was in regards to future building additions. We are looking at this site with the potential for building additions to extend off of the south wall and then primarily west, which is why you see the big blank white slate on the site plans. The programming for those additions have not been done yet, so we can't say exactly what size those are going to end up being. But with regards to stormwater calculations in our stormwater pond, we have made some assumptions, and as part of that stormwater calculation package, we'll provide those sizes. I think that's it, unless there's any other questions.
Okay. Any other comments, questions?
What about the trees in the back for sight off the highway? Dan had suggested.
Absolutely, yep.
Okay.
We'll
All right.
gladly
Just
move
wanna make
those back, yep. Yep.
Okay. This is a public hearing, so if we can take a motion to open the public hearing.
Make motion?
Support.
Motion by Steve, supported by Tyler to open the public hearing. All those in favor, aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. It's carried. At this point, we'll take public comment. Seeing no public to comment, entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion.
Support.
Motion by Tyler, supported by Tom to close the public hearing. All those in favor, aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. It sounds like most of those issues that were raised in the reports, Dan did have a comment concerning low-growth seed mix on the west side where you got the downslope. Is that amenable to the applicant? Okay. Any other issues that we see?
I just comment there that, good job on the site plan. You see a lot of these come in where they got page and a half or 2 pages of conditions, and this is very short for this size of building, and it's a very nice looking building. I just wanted to comment on that, so.
I will make a comment that I agree totally with Scott on that truck turning template. If you build it the way you show, I will go take pictures of the mess where the truck ruts are in it and bring them to your office. Guaranteed. Unless you put steel posts to keep them off that little short radius, they'll be out.
Maybe we'll sometime.
Guaranteed. The
Well,
other thing is, I'm very uncomfortable with this big blank wall looking at the highways. You got your name on it. I would think you'd want to dress it up and make it look attractive. The one next door, to me, right now is ugly.
Yes, please.
I misspoke earlier after I sat down. So on that rear elevation, Dan, I don't know if you can pull that up, but there are glass panels that we're proposing. Those are indeed glass panels. I guess the conversation was whether or not to enlarge those. We'd like to keep them the same. So
I
those,
asked you if those were leaving, and you said yes.
I misspoke,
That's all
sir.
black wall.
I misspoke.
Oh.
I was corrected when I sat down. So
Okay. I
tho-
didn't see anybody going in.
those are indeed glass. We just didn't want to make those any larger from what we had there. So just a point of clarification.
Breaks it up a little better.
I was gonna say, because the one next door, that big flat white panel is like,
Brazen.
So there's been a lot of talk historically about the big white Reuters buildings. Justin may even remember some of this because
Oh, yeah.
it goes way back. So I think in the past, what the planning commission has done to break that up is require different vertical color panels, different things like this. And, you know, it's totally reasonable to ask for that because we've got some good experience to show us that planting half a pine tree up against a big white building that's 1,000 feet long is not gonna get it done.
because those trees won't be that big for about 20 years.
So it sounds like we've hit on all the items then, I believe.
Dan, were you talking about having those panels bigger or something else to break it up?
Yeah, that's right. And it was a conversation we had it was not a major point of discussion, but we had that conversation at site plan review about whether there could be some additional glass on that frontage. It's sort of a business model preference choice of whether they make their front door on Northridge or on I-96. And maybe when they do the addition, if they do the addition on I-96, that's another opportunity for more architectural interest there. But for now, yes, I thought it was a good idea to add some more features on that wall. I don't think it's required, but to Scott's point, the more you can embellish that area with really robust landscaping and break up the long monotonous white wall, the better.
Is this a standard, just old ribbed pole building type siding?
Insulated panels.
But the old vertical rib stuff? Looks like, kind of like a glorified pole building, you know, that kind of
It's
material.
like falk. It's the same material as falk is.
I don't like that one. It's just white wall. I'd like to, this is gonna go against everything there, I'm gonna get shot outside, but I'd like to see your name big. So dress it up. That's gonna be able to read that at 80 miles an hour.
Neon lights.
I didn't say neon lights, but
Flashing.
that big white wall.
That is not a very big sign.
Can I address the?
So yeah, one of the main reasons we don't want a lot of glass on the back there is we're going to have some laser technologies back there that'll be running, as well as welding areas that use flash helmets. So that's part of our safety protocol, so that we don't have people lifting their helmets up all day long and then not lifting them and doing a weld and causing, you know, retina damage. So we try to keep it's going to be brightly lit, but it's going to be controlled brightly lit inside, so that when they adjust their flash helmets, it'll work within that condition. So we're trying to not trying to get rid of all light, natural light, because if you look at the whole building, the whole purpose is to try and make the user experience in the shop to be similar to the office as much as possible that's practical. So we want people to be able to stop and look out the windows and take a look at the view. We're planning on leaving a lot of green space in the area, so that it makes for a good natural area. So that's one of the reasons for fewer windows in the back. It's purposeful to how we're laying out the whole facility and the flow of the building. We will definitely be amicable to putting more green area in there. Granted, the trees will take a while to grow, but we plan on having that look pretty nice from that standpoint. And as far as signage goes, we would definitely be amicable to increasing our signage. It doesn't.
Nobody else is gonna vote for it.
It doesn't help us because we're not selling from the street.
Yep.
So we also don't want something to be gaudy that everyone looks over and goes, oh geez, you know, you gotta look at that big Flexco sign all the time, and you know, but you know, if that's something that's of interest, we would definitely pursue looking at it. We also don't want it to look kind of circusy in the back, so we don't want a bunch of different colors on the outside of the building. And for what it's worth, if I could get away with all the rooms in my house being painted white, and my wife would let that happen, I'd be all for it. But,
I understand that.
that's a whole different discussion altogether.
Off-white, not white.
Yeah, just, yeah, like,
Okay, I'm just thinking out loud here. Instead of real windows, how about some fake windows that bring some color? Green panels, something on there? That way, what do you think, Dan? They look like windows, but they're really not?
I mean, insofar as glass is a approved architectural material, it looks nice, even if it's fake to some degree. There's a difference between glass that you use to provide sort of a transparent view into a building and glass you use to embellish a building. I certainly don't think that would hurt if they can add that. Like,
At night,
be a little
you could have some
unusual.
mood lighting up in there, so you come down the highway, oh, there's these fake windows.
Could just be different colored panel, you know, a square panel or something like that. Or
I don't like your big big plain white wall.
Now,
just one other, if I could just say one thing along that line of thought. The applicants are mentioning the trees on this view here, but just it should be noted that those trees aren't actually proposed on the landscape plan. So it's all the more important to be clear about what you want to have back there, because it really is just lawn on the landscaping plan, which would be pretty stark. So
You look at the size of those man doors, and you look at that, and that building is big. It's long and it's tall.
if we can just get a clarification, my understanding from the elevations that you have and the notes on it, that you are intending that to be a vertical strip window. And I think in your presentation, you mentioned that you wanted to have opportunity for anybody in the building to be able to take a look out. So it wasn't meant to be decorative. I think it was meant to be functional. And from my standpoint, having those in there that does break up the length of the wall. And given his explanation and keeping them at this scale would appear to be reasonable, but that's just my perspective on it. I welcome others to chime in on what their preference would be as well.
I don't feel the need to imply my taste in terms of the decoration on this one. I think that it's a good plan, and I get what Tom's saying, but for my part, I'm comfortable with it, really.
You got a lot longer to look at it than I do. take me out in the handicap van to come by there in a few years.
So based on the drawing, are those windows strips, are those about 3 foot wide? Based on like on a door, if you compare that to the door?
Look wider than that.
They're 4-foot
4
panels,
foot,
yeah.
okay.
The doors are.
Okay, unless there's any other issues, we may be in a position to entertain a motion.
Thank you, I appreciate the time.
Thank you.
I'm not gonna back up on the attorney template though. They'll be on the line.
And if you do make a motion, if it includes, if it stands model motion that refers to my letter, you might want to make a note of that, because in my letter, I didn't put recommend, I put should be increased. So you want to dance around that, however you feel. But
And of course, that is 9/24.
No more questions. I'll make a motion for case number 19-843 for Walker View Lot I-8 Flexco Final Area Site Plan. I make a motion to approve the final area site plan for the proposed Flexco project, including a 284,000 square foot building and related site improvements at the subject 36-acre lot of 1920 Northridge Avenue Northwest, based on the submitted final area site plan set dated 9/18/2019, subject to the following conditions and based on the findings of fact noted below. Conditions of final area site plan review. The applicant agrees to all conditions noted in the planning director's letter dated 9/23/19. The applicant agrees to all conditions noted in the city engineer's letter dated 9/24/19. The applicant is to consider the truck turning template suggested by the city engineer. Number 4, additional trees to be shown on south side of building on final plan. Proposed signage PUD benefits findings of fact per section 94-220. The proposed sign package, which includes 164 square foot wall mounted sign facing I-96, is consistent with the following findings. A more appropriate overall plan can be achieved by allowing greater than a maximum of 120 square foot of wall signage, and a restriction to 120 square foot of wall signage is not required to prevent driver distraction and ensure public safety.
Sorry, I couldn't quite hear you. Could you please repeat what you said?
You gotta start over.
Wow, sorry. She's listening to me.
Yeah, so's Google.
Findings of fact per section 94-213, stated in the affirmative and based on the content of the Flexco final area site plan revision dated 9/18/2019. The proposed development conforms to the City of Walker 1998 master plan and complements the City of Walker 2007 subplan number 1 future land use plan. Number 2, the development does meet applicable standards of the City of Walker zoning ordinance, the City of Walker stormwater ordinance, and other applicable city, state, and federal codes and laws. Number 3, the proposed development will be served by adequate streets, services, and utilities. Number 4, the proposed development building design will be harmonious and appropriate in appearance with the existing or intended character of the general vicinity, in my opinion. Number 5, the proposed development provides adequate routes of traffic to, from, and within the site. Number 6, the proposed development provides convenient and safe pedestrian routes. Number 7, the proposed development does adequately address on-site parking. Number 8, noise, light, or other external effects from any source whatsoever which is connected with the proposed development will not adversely affect adjacent and neighboring lands or uses. Number 9, the PUD does not create excessive additional requirements at public cost for public facilities and services.
Motion by Tyler, supported by Scott. Do you have any comments, questions?
Are you gonna make that radius a little bigger in the back?
We'll certainly look at it with Scott.
I think you guys said you already looked at it, and you don't want to, right? So, but just assume that it's going to look like this. If it's,
I will be over to show you the run.
It's their problem if
It's, you know
it
what?
happens.
Well, we'll call the question. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you very much.
Hey, Justin, are you here next time too?
I might be.
You seem to be here all the time.
You like it sometimes.
You should learn about the trunk thing. I don't know how many $1 million building you save $2,000 on asphalt. Put my coat on.
All right,
I'll be leaving shortly.
looking for staff and commissioner updates. Thank you.
Thank you. Is on for October 16th. It's, sometimes you guys get into more architectural and signage related items like you kind of dabbled in tonight. The Target store on Alpine Avenue is doing a sort of facelift and moving around some of their signage. So that's the kind of thing that you also look at if it's in a PUD, wherever there's an expansion or change to a previously approved sign package. So you'll be looking at those Target edits. We have a provision in our ordinance that says you have to have a special use permit to enclose a uncovered porch. And there's an uncovered porch in a front yard setback where that's coming to fruition right now. And maybe that's something we'll look at with ordinance committee to simplify it, because I'm not sure if we need to take it to you guys every time. But for right now, that's coming to you in a couple of weeks. And then
Doesn't happen very often.
yeah. Then zoning ordinance amendments. So I know Scott is patiently listening for if he has to be here, and I don't think he does.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
I knew that's what this pen flipping was. So it's zoning ordinance amendments. We'll be looking at a few items we looked at earlier in the year, plus one or two new items, right, Steven's on our ordinance committee. And there's still some stuff we got into earlier this year that we're not quite ready to take back to a public hearing, but we'll just keep working through that at ordinance committee level. So anyway, October 16th is different framework from tonight.
Is the one that withdrew tonight dead?
They've withdrawn and they said they're gonna be in touch with me soon. I shared the same letter.
Yeah, oh, that was all you got?
Yeah. I think we'll be hearing from the sellers more as time passes. They're trying to synchronize with our master plan. That's gonna be really important. It's been various versions of the same type of project for years, so I think there needs to be some further discussion there. But I have a sense those hotel developers from tonight's case probably won't propose the same thing again, but
They spent a lot of money in the plans.
If you guys haven't walked that property, it's pretty amazing. It is really amazing. There's trees.
I think they had an open house with those folks months and months ago.
Yeah, they did.
And said everything went fine. So to see that petition come in later with pretty much every single house saying,
Pretty well written,
No.
wasn't it?
yeah, that was,
I know the people in that neighborhood, and I can't imagine that if they held an open house and got any turnout, it would have gone very well.
I was there, and it went well. But it was kind of dropped in people's lap, and then, you start thinking about it. And especially if you walk the property and you realize where the back wall will be compared to the houses.
Right, there
They say,
you go.
oh, there's all those trees in there. You can see the houses even in the summer.
Yep.
So, I mean, it's not very far. So,
You look at the size of those walls and it's like, this is not the place for this. You wanna build a couple of hotels, go across the Alpine Avenue, carve out a couple of them parking lots that are vacant all day, every day. Pop your hotels there.
Yep.
Like, we need more hotels.
so that's not an open case for tonight, but if it comes back, we'll talk about
So I'm
it.
gonna leave you all the plans from that. If you wanna fish them out of the trash to save them for the future, feel free.
All right.
I'm not taking anything home for that.
Oh, and then Talmadge Township is updating their master plan, and that's right on our border. You might have some interest there. The city of Grand Rapids sends us all their master plan documents. They have something about their Southtown Business District update, which isn't really on Walker's border, but you might still be
I
interested.
looked at that, it's like,
So links to those plans are on tonight's agenda page too, just if you want to take a look. Try to edge match with our neighboring communities.
excellent.
All right?
Any other business? Scott?
Am I making the
The newest member does it.
All right, thank you. Motion carried.
Good job tonight.